What is going on, everybody, and welcome to my review of the latest film from director Christopher Landon, Drop. This film is a mystery thriller about a widowed woman who is going on a date for the first time in many years, and things quickly take a turn for the worst once she starts receiving these very mysterious and threatening messages ordering her to assassinate her date. And if she refuses to do so or alerts anyone within the restaurant as to what is going on, the people on the other end of these threats will kill her little boy who they have held hostage at her home. I have been looking forward to checking this movie out really for a couple reasons. First being, I just think the concept of it sounded interesting, this sort of whodunit kind of thriller that's isolated to this relatively small restaurant. I thought that could be an interesting environment for a story like this. But also the little bit of the trailer that I allowed myself to see, I think sold me even more on this concept. Which, by the way, just touching on this trailer a little bit, the trailer for this movie has driven me absolutely insane. It has played at every movie I have been to for the last 2 months. And in this trailer, there's this constant sound of a phone buzzing, and there's just something about that sound, I don't know what it is, but it makes my teeth feel so freaking weird. And I am so happy that this movie is finally out and I never have to hear this trailer again. The Sabrina Carpenter song does slap though, I will give them that. The other reason, and really the main reason I was looking forward to checking this movie out, is that it is being directed by Christopher Landon. Whether it be as a writer or a director, he has delivered some of the most enjoyable films of the last decade, in my opinion. With movies such as Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, Freaky, and both Happy Death Day films, he has become someone that if he is attached to a project in any capacity, that movie's release date immediately becomes one I have circled on my calendar. And being that all of these films I have enjoyed from him have mainly been these horror comedy genre blending type films, I was interested in seeing how his directing style would look in a thriller film like this, especially one that seems to be operating in a much more serious tone than what I am accustomed to from him. So with Drop, did I get another Christopher Landon experience that I will be rewatching for many years to come, or was I ready to leave this film with the check the second the credits started rolling? Well, before I answer that, I'd like to ask that while you're here, go ahead and give the video a like and subscribe to the channel as well for more movie reviews. Make sure to get down in the comments below and tell me any thoughts you have on Drop. I would love to hear everything you guys have to say. Now let's get into this review. As always, starting with the positives, and I think I'll start with our two leads here. Megan Fahey and Brendan Sklenar are names that I know of, but I actually haven't seen any of their works. I'm sorry, I never got around to seeing It Ends With Us. Shocking, I know.
Am I the only one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece? This movie isn't stupid! You're stupid!
But being my first time actually seeing either of these two work, I think they both do a really solid job. But the way they interact, I felt was very sweet. They both do a really good job at capturing that classic romantic vibe, even with all the mental agony that her character is having to go through. Not everything about their characters fully worked for me, and I'll elaborate on that later in the video, but judging them solely off of their performances, they both do really well, and I enjoyed the chemistry between the two of them. I said I wanted to see what Christopher Landon's directing would look like in a genre that's different from what he has mainly done up to this point, and I think a lot of his best qualities that I enjoyed so much about those other films, he was able to bring over into this film very effectively. He has been the king in my eyes at blending together multiple genres within his movies. Overall, this is a full-on thriller, but he knows how to inject the perfect dose of elements from other genres like comedy, romance, and even some action, and he knows the exact perfect times to implement each one. It has been his calling card, and so I was glad to see that even though the overarching genre might change, he is still able to pull off his unique style of directing successfully, and that is what I enjoy about his work the most, and so I was happy to see it here. Moving on to the negatives, because unfortunately that's about all I got for the positives with this movie, because I was actually pretty disappointed with what I got in Drop. My main source of disappointment with this movie is that even though the writing in terms of story and reveals and other things of that nature is pretty solid, the pacing of this movie moves at such a breakneck speed for the entirety of the film that in the end it's a movie that just left me feeling exhausted. I get the number one thing a thriller needs to be is to be thrilling, but this movie has the tension cranked up to 100 for 90% of the runtime and never really takes a break to let me catch my breath. It kind of felt like being on a roller coaster that is just one long continuous drop that never comes back up to prepare you for the next drop. Being in that constant state of tension might be effective for some, but for me it just made it impossible for me to have any fun with the scenarios that were playing out in front of me. I would have liked to have seen them take their time a little bit in between these really intense sequences instead of it just being a continuous string of these moments. I know with a lot of movies you have to be willing to ignore a few things sometimes. I'm a horror fan, I can be quite good at that, but this film asks you to look over way too much and just not ask questions, and I wasn't capable of doing that, and so it just made it really hard for me to ever be completely bought in. An example of this is that the entire time they are on this date, Brendan Sklinner's character has no knowledge as to what is going on, and so for him, there is nothing to be concerned about, and this is just a normal date. But how much am I supposed to believe one man will put up with from a woman who he is seeing in person for the first time and has only known for a few months? From his perspective, not knowing the things that we know, this is the worst date of all time. This woman is doing everything she possibly could to make this man feel uncomfortable, and it's not like he's portrayed as this sad sack, desperate loser who just feels lucky to have a woman that will talk to him so he's willing to put up with a little extra bullshit. No, have you seen Brendan Sklinner? This guy probably has to beat women off of him with a stick, but I refuse that there is any man that would put up with the things that he puts up with from this woman in this movie on this date. It just stretches way too far beyond what I can believe and accept. And I say all of this as a guy who was dating a girl so far out of his league that for the first 2 months of our relationship, I thought she was pranking me. And even I wouldn't have sat through half of the things that happened on this date. It's also really hard for me to believe the lengths this group is going to just to kill this one regular ass dude. With all the planning and scheming that they're going through, you would think they were trying to assassinate a world leader, and he's just a regular photographer. There is a long history of investigators and journalists and reporters being taken out under mysterious circumstances, and no one ever gets caught. So it was hard to believe that any of this supervillain plotting was necessary. Maybe if it had been just a couple details here and there that this movie asks you to look past, I could have done that no problem. But this whole movie hinges on you just never asking questions about what is going on, and I am just not capable of watching a lot of movies like that. And so for me, they stretched their credibility far too thin, and that really hindered the experience I had watching this film. There was also some editing choices in this movie that didn't work for me. It all mainly pertains to how we see the messages and drops that are being sent to Megan Fahey's character. And I get what Christopher Landon was trying to do. He wanted to avoid just showing us her phone 100 times in the movie, but the way they decided to go about this just looked really bad to me. Large portions of this movie looked like a movie trailer because she'll receive a message and these really big chunky letters will pop up on the screen, and it looked like in a movie trailer when you see all the blurbs pop up from media outlets and reviewers, and to actually see that in a movie really took me out, and I just thought it was ugly and I really didn't like it. Again, I understand the intent, but I hated the execution. Another thing I wasn't a big fan of is that there's a little bit of commentary in this film about survivors of abuse, and it just felt a bit tacked on in my opinion. Being that that is such an emotional and heavy topic of discussion, I feel like if a movie's going to incorporate something like that, I would prefer to see them do something a little more meaningful with it instead of it just being used as a minor story detail. They don't do anything offensive with it or anything like that, so I'm not going to grill them too hard for it, but I do feel like its inclusion was just a bit unnecessary. So there you guys have it. Those are all of my thoughts on Drop. I'm giving this film a 5.5 out of 10. I was just really disappointed in it. I don't think it's an awful movie or anything like that. It just fell firmly in that mid category for me. And I would still maybe recommend you check this out once it's available on a streaming service, because I think how people feel about this movie will vary from person to person. I think it's a very subjective film, because if you're someone who will be able to look past a lot of the things that I was not capable of looking past, and if the breakneck pacing doesn't exhaust you like it did me, then I think you could probably get a lot more enjoyment out of this film than I did. But let me know what you guys think about Drop down in the comments below. Is it a movie you're looking forward to checking out? If you've already seen it, what did you think about it? I'd love to read everything you guys have to say about this film. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well for more movie reviews, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.